Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tactical Sport Podcast. It's Daniel here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
And firstly, Sean, how was your weekend? You were busy enough there doing a bit of rugby commentary, I believe.
Yeah, I was commentating on Young Munster and Garryowen in the AIL, two huge clubs, a huge local derby there in Limerick, and it kind of a lot of history between the two clubs and incidents in the past. And when I was showing the guard my sheet to say I'm allowed travel outside the county because I'm a worker. He said good luck when I told him I was commentating on Garryowen Young Munster. So I kind of didn't know what to expect, but it was a great game, and Young Munster won the home side, and a really high standard of rugby, and a lot of lads who played Munster A and a few lads who played Connacht A, but been in and around semi-pro rugby and professional rugby. So it's kind of interesting to see that, because we spoke with Charlie Rock early on in the podcast series about maybe players who stopped playing, and Charlie played a bit in the AIL himself, and it's a good breeding ground. It's sort of that benchmark in between interpros and that break from school rugby as well. So yeah, it was a really good game. You would have liked a big crowd there to make the atmosphere, but I suppose it's the same with other sports, and there's a lot of people watching on the live stream. And once we got on the way after a few technical difficulties, it was a really good game to commentate.
So you're enjoying it anyways, the old commentary.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of it's a new experience, and it's going to help this year with live streaming coming to the fore. And I've sort of been having an opportunity of it, and it's kind of great to get a big game like that. Even to the non-rugby fan, Munster and Garryowen, you would have heard of them, two huge clubs. Not only in Limerick rugby, but in Irish rugby as well. And you kind of feel the history at those games. There's a little bit of needle during the match. There's a bit of needle in the warm-up, bit of pushing and shoving. And you could kind of sense that atmosphere throughout. And both clubs don't really like each other either. So, it's sort of a case of getting one up on the other one.
So moving on to the weekend review, we've kind of a couple of things to get through. Obviously, the likes of the Premier League wasn't on; it was International Week. But we want to start with the golf and the BMW PGA, and Tyrell Hatton being an impressive winner. What were your thoughts on Tyrell Hatton, first of all, as a winner of the BMW PGA, and follows in a long line of a really good roll of honour in that tournament?
Yeah, he sort of kicked on in the last year. Won at Bay Hill, won the Arnold Palmer, and it's sort of a really difficult thing to do as a European. That not many go away and win on the PGA Tour and win a big tournament like the Arnold Palmer, and with his win this week at Wentworth, he goes into the top 10 of the world ranking. So he's really stepped up his game in terms of this year, and showing that he's able to mix it with the very best in the world, and then to come back and win. And to be honest, he was very comfortable all throughout Sunday. It was just one bogey, a small missed putt from 2 or 3 feet, but other than that, he was so good. 5 under par around, and when you're defending the lead of 4 shots, and it was kind of straight away after the eagle of Perez, it was back to none. And he could have faltered, and Tyrrell in the past had a sort of temper with him, or a tangent where he could go off and sort of lose the run of himself. But even he showed signs of frustration, but throughout that round, he was still keeping the head cool and playing big shots when they needed to be hit.
So for those that are having too much of an interest in golf, you may have heard the story that Tyrell Hatton was actually wearing hoodies, and I think it kind of came to a fore firstly when he kind of tweeted out saying, reply to this tweet, I know I did, saying your size, and I'm going to give 10 people a size of a free hoodie. And then it turns out that a lot of people replied. There was a bit of, I didn't actually see myself personally a lot of people giving out about the hoodie. I think sometimes people kind of make a bit more of a deal to it, but golf clubs have always been known for not quite moving with the times. What were your thoughts on that? First of all, Tyrell, kind of wearing a hoodie in the BMW PGA, and I guess kind of making sure golf, if it wants to reach younger players, they need to kind of probably relax their dress code a small bit, or their etiquette a small bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think golf is slowly moving with the times. There's always going to be the old guard that maybe don't want to see change, and probably reluctant to see change. But even if you look at the 2 tours, the PGA Tour and the European Tour, there's a lot different golf. There's a lot different golf attire being worn. The likes of Ricky Fowler and Phil Mickelson, Tony Finau has been one to be very extrovert with his clothes. And now Tyrell Hatton, and I suppose I don't really have a problem with it. I wouldn't necessarily wear it. I don't know if
I thought it was real nice. Now I was straight. As soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's a lovely hoodie." And then I went on later on and I saw his tweet, and before you knew it, I was in the draw trying to win it. I might have won it now, but you never know.
But and he kind of made a point about it, because I think he wore the hoodie all 4 days.
Yeah, he wore a white one Saturday, and I'm pretty sure he wore the same one today, yesterday and Friday, and I'm presuming he wore one on Thursday. I didn't see him actually.
So yeah, well, it just shows you kind of what his attitude to it is. And I think a lot of people on tour, when they're sort of wearing the same clothes week in, week out, and it is fashion, and it is trying to move with the times and trying to get your even your own brand out there, if you like, and trying to be your own person. And look, he did it. I don't think it's a huge issue, and the European Tour don't have a problem with it. I know the PGA Tour wouldn't have a problem with it, and I suppose it's
more the golf clubs instead of the tours, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the RNA and the USGA, I don't know if they've yet an issue with it, but I'm sure their member clubs and people in and around the game of golf will potentially have a problem with it. But you shouldn't be talking about what hoodies he was wearing. You should be talking about the unbelievable golf and the unbelievable showcase that he showed all throughout the 4 days.
Shane Larry, what were your takeaway from him? Overall, a very good week considering the run of form. I heard him. He was saying that when he got back home from the Irish Open, he wasn't used to the distance of the ball in the cold weather, not going as far as it was in America. So it probably took a bit of kind of getting used to. He missed the cut there. It was a last minute decision to go into the BMW PGA. How do you think his week went overall? Because I suppose a tad bit of disappointment in the sense that he was in contention after 2 days, and it didn't quite happen over the weekend for him to finish in the top 10, but still I think 13th in the end, so not too bad a week.
Yeah, 3 over for the weekend after being 12 under for the first 2 days is extremely disappointing for him. And for when you don't have that form, and go over to tell you form, you sometimes just have to grind out a performance from somewhere. And I looked over the first couple of days as if he had that, and I think he kind of got dragged down a little bit with the way Matt Fitzpatrick was playing in that final group on Saturday, and they both kind of pulled each other down. Shane was in a really good position going into the last 5 or 6 holes, and he picked up a couple of bogeys. And they're the stretch at Wentworth where you can really attack and really pick up. I think that the front line as total scoring for the whole 4 days was playing plus 200, and the back line was playing minus 200. So it just showed you. And I think it's something that on the first couple of days Shane actually managed to do really well. He was very consistent and safe on the front nine, picking up a couple of birdies on the first couple of days, and then the back nine is where he really took it to task and really up to scoring from there. And he just didn't quite get that right on the weekend, and that'll be disappointing for him, because he managed to get himself up there. It's a course he loves, consistently inside the top 15, finished second I think to Rory about 5 or 6 years ago. So it'd be disappointing for himself that he didn't quite manage. And even today on the first hole, hit a lovely drive down there, and it's a really hard hole. Hit a 6-iron to about 6 foot. I think it was the closest shot in there all day, and sort of missed a putt, and he missed a few putts on Saturday, and you could even tell that it sort of just came over from Saturday night, and missed a par putt on the second after a really good bunker shot. And you never really fancied him from there. 1 over after 2, but just the 2 missed putts from inside 7 or 8 feet, where that could really start you off if he goes birdie par, and at a really tough stretch of holes, the first 3 or 4 at Wentworth, and all of a sudden you're in contention. And it just didn't happen for him for whatever reason. And it'll be interesting to see what he does over the next few weeks. He's got the Masters
in about 4 weeks, I think.
Yeah, so that's a really huge opportunity for Shane, and I think it was good that he got a bit of competitive action back in, and was in and around contention, and it might give him a little bit of something going forward to Augusta, because it's a big opportunity for him. He is the champion golfer of the year, and he'll still have that tag going into Augusta. And look, he's had kind of sort of mixed success around there. Missed a few cuts. He
got a hole in one, didn't he?
Yeah, had a hole in one. Had a really good Sunday that day. And you never know with Shane, and he's a really competitive person, and a really he's got the stomach for the fight. And if he is to sort of, you wouldn't be surprised to see him grind out a result from somewhere. And look, he he's got the short game to do it around Augusta, that's for sure.
The Patrick Reed you wanted to touch on briefly, I suppose. The European Tour and the PGA Tour. European Tour has always had a problem with attracting the best players, and I guess COVID has accelerated that. And this was probably the best field they've had post-COVID in terms of, you know, ranking points, money, and also the field they ended up getting. Should more players? I know it's kind of hard in COVID times, but should more players be doing what Patrick Reed does? And Patrick Reed should probably maybe be getting a small bit more credit from the likes of, you know, people in Europe for actually supporting the European Tour.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a stat that he's played, you know, 75 European Tour tournaments, you know, whether that be WGCs and whatever. But, you know, and he's top of the race to Dubai at the moment. And that'd be a big coup for him if he is to win the race to Dubai, you know, largely thanks to that win at Mexico and the WGC. But it just kind of shows that maybe the personality of Patrick Reed and sort of the desire to go out and play and build up his world golf ranking points. And, you know, he actually didn't play his best golf, you know, funnily enough, but
he got third in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, and 2 eagles on the last holes on the weekend, on 18 both days. And, you know, he was just really solid all weekend and never really kind of put a foot wrong. Had a bogey coming in that kind of derailed him from sort of pushing on a little bit. But, you know, just testament to the kind of player he is and what makes him so good. And, you know, if he is to win the race to Dubai this year, maybe that might attract more Americans come over. But I don't know why they don't come.
Well, it's just they've so much money in the PGA Tour. You know, they don't have to travel as much. They can travel in America. And then, like, I think this was always happening. And I think COVID has accelerated it to the point where, you know, it's surprising enough they got that field. But, like, you look at the Irish Open prize money last week, I think it was the lowest since the late 1990s, like, which is unheard of considering the money that Dubai Duty Free and 3 before them were putting in a sponsor. So you'd have to be a small bit concerned about the European Tour and the gap. It reminds you of the Premier League and the EFL, and the gap's just getting bigger and bigger. And COVID's just accelerated this. So
yeah, but I think the Rolex Series events have been...
They've reduced that again though this year. Haven't
they?
And
the Rolex Series have been great in attracting those big players to play in the events where the prize money is that little bit more. And, you know, there's always been certain events like the Scottish Open and the Irish Open to a certain degree that has attracted players from, you know, all over the world to play. And you know, the European Tour is maybe missing that stretch in the summer this year with the Open and what have you, and with COVID. But I think, you know, look, the way it's going, and I think, like I said, the traveling maybe is a big issue for
well, it will be going forward, particularly whether it was before. Like, it probably was, but now, like, people will definitely think twice about traveling. Like,
yeah, well, and I think Americans, you know, are probably comfortable traveling around the 50 states of America playing golf rather than, you know, maybe traveling to Europe, mainland Europe, or even the Dubai swing or the desert swing as it is. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see what happens as sport kind of moves on post COVID. But you know, I think if Patrick Reed wins the race to Dubai, which he is in pole position to do, I think it'll be, you know, he'll sort of send out a message. And, you know, once he gets the world ranking points from this week and he just keeps on moving into a position to, you know, after this potential race to Dubai win, I think maybe more and more people might get attracted to it.
Yeah, listen, before we'll finish on golf with Bryson DeChambeau, played in Vegas this week, you know, threatened to win it after a Thursday-Friday round, left him one shot off, you know, disappointed Saturday, got a small bit back on Sunday. What are your thoughts on him? He's going to try out the 48-inch driver. He's not telling anyone what distances he's hitting it. You know, it almost, like, there was a few stats going around after the US Open that he was like the 7th furthest driver in the field. I think that was only the official data where they take 2 drives around and then they make the driving distance. And if you look at the overall total driving distance, Bryson was number 1 by a fair bit. So, you know, realistically, golf is looking at a huge moment. But, like, I'm a fan of Bryson in the sense that it gets people talking. Like, I went out of my way to watch Bryson this weekend, where I wouldn't have watched the Shriners Hospital for Children's Open in Vegas, you know, at all, really, due to the field they get. But Bryson, to me, it reminded me of almost a Tiger kind of figure in terms of you kind of, if Bryson's hitting the shot, you're going to look up at the TV. And I was actually surprised on Saturday that I was watching the coverage and Bryson, while he was out of it, I was still wanted to watch Bryson. Do you know what I mean? And they actually show the leaders, which is what we actually were crying out for before. But what are your thoughts of Bryson going in? I guess 48-inch driver, he's got 4 weeks to do nothing but hit golf balls and hit bombs. Should there be a bit of a fear factor going into Augusta in terms of the rest of them? I know Jordan Spieth, before he came in, was quoted as saying that Bryson has to play bad for everyone else to have a chance.
Yeah, I saw a few clips of that interview he did on a podcast, and Jordan was very complimentary about Bryson, but he was also sort of worried for the state of golf going forward, almost, if you like.
And are you?
I think that I said a few weeks ago, I think the big litmus test for golf is Bryson at Augusta, and sort of the way it is with no fans, where he could be driving it over places that maybe he wouldn't try if there was fans, taking on corners that he shouldn't have. You think of some of the par fives, the famous par fives. You think of number 2, it's a huge fairway downhill. You wonder how far he could drive it. I saw a tweet during the week talking about Bryson just on the front nine where he could drive the ball, with the advantage he gets. And I just think he could turn holes in Augusta from treacherous, historically difficult golf holes into easy golf holes. Look at number 11, which has always been one of the longer par 4s on tour, really. I think just over 500 yards, and how difficult that is with the approach shot. If he takes on the corner and hits a 360, 370 and gets it far enough down there that he only has an 8-iron or a 9-iron or a pitching wedge in, that's when you'll see him with the low scoring. But I think that's the big litmus test for golf at the moment, and see just how effective it is around Augusta, because it's the most famous golf course in the world. And if he is to do something special there, I think a lot of heads will turn in his favor. And at the moment with a few bookmakers, and that just goes to show you,
look at that field and he's favourite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and everyone is talking as if it's Bryson's to win. Yet you've got so many different storylines. The likes of Rory going for the Grand Slam, Tiger Woods, Jordan Spieth's record at Augusta. You think of DJ, how well he's played last year. John Rahm hasn't won a major, and yet everyone is talking about Bryson destroying Augusta. But we'll certainly touch on Augusta closer to the time. But I think it's going to be, like I said, I think it's going to be the sporting event that is so much better because of fans, as much as it can be. And I think it's going to be the one sporting event that is just going to take to the world better than maybe what COVID had before COVID.
Or so you think it'd be better without fans? Sorry.
Yeah, I just think you're going to see
be different.
Yeah, it's going to be so much different, and it's going to be nice to see it different. Cameras can get in positions that cameras wouldn't have been able to. You're going to see the undulations a lot more. People have spoken about that. You like some number 9, the hole at number 9, which is a par 4, and it's one of those famous greens where it just slopes down to the false front, and you think of where they put the pin on Sunday, and it's normally in the middle using the false front. You just, if the camera angle can get sort of level with the hole and showing the undulations, I think without fans it's going to be weird, and it's going to be magical in a sense as well.
I suppose it's important to say Bryson. I heard Patrick Harrington make this point a few weeks ago, and we've covered Bryson on the podcast, episode 4. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, we talked to Malachy Clerkin and Peter Lowry, which is kind of good to listen back to it again and see where Bryson was then and what he's actually done since. He's won did he win the tournament around episode 4? But anyway, he won a major since the US Open. But Bryson's in like the 190s range, but the world record's 211 miles per hour. So it's not a case that Bryson's doing something that's never been seen before. It's just a case that he's doing something that hasn't been done on the tour before, and he's willing to take on these corners where other players probably leave 1% or 2 back in the locker. So be interested to see the likes of Rory McIlroy put up recently on social media about trying to hit those ball speeds. So be interested to see now going forward. But look, we're going to move on to football now in the Ireland-Wales game. And Stephen Kenny, looking at stats, Sean, in the cold light of day, 1 goal in 4 games under Stephen Kenny. It's not ideal. But there were signs, a small bit of improvement. And look, considering the preparation in terms of the COVID cases, which we'll get to in a second, overall, were you happy enough with that performance?
Yeah, look, I thought it was, considering that what had happened on Thursday night it was, and what had happened sort of prior to the game, I thought we were really good, and I was impressed with just, there was a couple of times in the game where the game was at a bit of a lull. I think the first 12 minutes was sort of highlight to that, and it was just really poor. But other than that, I thought we played pretty well.
Jason Malumbi was good.
Yeah, Jason Malumbi, he's been so impressive for the 21s. When I saw him in Tala a few times, he's just got so much energy around the pitch, and he's sort of got that enthusiasm to play. Someone that's been brought up playing football this way, been have the confidence that Stephen Kenny can believes in him to play football, and even some of the runs he made forward, and I think he was able to, get on the ball and create a little bit more. And I was sort of skeptical with that midfield three. I thought, Malumbi's a really box-to-box player full of energy, and I wondered, could Hourihan sort of play deeper? And, to his credit, I thought he did really well. And for the likes of him and Hendrick to get 90 minutes under the belt after what had happened on Thursday night going to extra time, I thought was a credit to them, and it just shows you, how important they are, and two really good professionals. But look, going forward, I think there was a couple of clear issues. I thought Robbie Brady was okay. He probably should have scored in the first half when he had that chance on his left foot, and you would expect Robbie on his left foot, the way it opened up, to at least hit the target and work the keeper. James McLean, that red was just pure stupidity, really. And considering that the first yellow was just clever by the defender, he made it look as if James had kicked out, and he left the leg in there, but there was probably no way it was a yellow card. But the second yellow, I think, is an excuse.
Once you're on a yellow, it's a different ball game.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's just inexcusable. And you think that he was being fouled, he'd won the free, and I think he might have had that in his head. And there's a little bit of afters between McLean and Ampadu after the first challenge, because I think it was Edwards that was tackled, and Ampadu just sort of went over to McLean. So maybe if that was in his head, look, he's off the ground, he's in the air, and I think I'm not sure if it was a straight red. I'm not sure if they gave it as that, but certainly if you're on a yellow, you can't go diving in like that. And it sort of changed the dynamic of the game, because I thought for a while we were on top, and Shane Long should have scored in the second half. And we were probably pushing to get a winner more so, but once that red card comes in, we just had to sit back. But
the problem with the red card, I suppose, if Jack Byrne wasn't the plans to come on, that probably scuppered his chances in terms of the shape of the team. And I guess a lot of people on social media, League of Ireland fans particularly, and I understand their frustration that, they see this great white hope and he's been brought in the team and he doesn't get brought on. And, there's these things going around, he's the only outfield player being brought on. But I don't know, from I think there should be a small bit of patience there with that, given the circumstances of the game. At least wait to the Finland game before passing those kind of comments in terms of, Stephen Kenny using Jack Byrne. But, at the end of the day, the squad is predominantly made up of Premier League players, with a few Championship players. And Jack Byrne is still playing at the League of Ireland level. And, he has experience and he is linked with Championship clubs. But at the end of the day, you can see the reason. I don't think I can see the reasons he wasn't brought on against Slovakia, and I can also see the reasons he wasn't brought on against Wales.
No, to be honest, my take on it is that, Stephen Kenny's been in and around the League of Ireland. He knows what it's all about. And I don't think it's a case of that he's playing in the League of Ireland, he didn't come on. I think it probably just goes back to training and the way of football Stephen Kenny plays and what he wants from his team. And, maybe Jack Byrne is his biggest weakness, his sort of engine and his pace and getting in and around and pressing what Jeff Hendrick gives you. Look, we all know about how good he is on the ball, set pieces, his passing range. But maybe has he got the sort of the physical capability or the
he's a number 10, Rizzy, and you have to kind of almost do you almost build a team around Jack Byrne to get the best out of him, whereas Stephen Kenny has a system and you maybe have to fit into one of those areas. I know there is a number 10, but does Stephen Kenny demand more from that role than a Jack Byrne could possibly give you? That maybe Jack Byrne in the future could be seen as maybe an impact sub coming on when we need something to happen, as opposed to someone that can regularly start for Ireland.
Well, I'm not too sure if Jack Byrne is as traditional and number 10 as you get. Maybe it just even take Conor Rowland, who played there for the 21s. Conor Rowland was in that 20 yards in between the goal, in between those channels, where if you watch Jack Byrne for Rovers, he likes to drop deep and he likes to be the one getting the ball into the likes of Dylan Watts, who plays there, Aaron McInerney, into the feet of Aaron Green, and sort of playing those passes and getting in around it afterwards. And Rovers have built that team sort of in and around them, with they get their fullbacks nice and high and wide, and that kind of leaves Jack with a bit of room to sort of sit a little bit deeper, if you like. And don't get me wrong, he's so creative, but I'm not sure if he's as traditional a number 10 as maybe it comes, especially the modern day number 10, where you've been asked to press and run around and really do a lot defensively, and maybe that's it. Maybe it just is a training, but I don't think anyone's doubting the quality he has, and or whether he could have been given a run. And I think you're right. I think that red card maybe just scuppers his chances a little bit. But that being said, Josh Cullen maybe suits. Josh Cullen is sort of a number 6, if you like, someone that's going to sit in a little bit more and sort of the player to come on when you're 10 men and your backs are kind of against the walls.
You final point on Ireland, because we spoke a lot about them this week on the podcast, but the big game coming against Finland, and Dara O'Shea and Jason Knight have been called up to the squad. How big a moment is it for those two lads? And what were your thoughts on them being called up?
Well, especially for Dara, Dara's been in and around the senior squad and he's sort of been linked, but because of the injury to Kevin Long, you'd imagine they won't risk him. Sort of got a bang to his eye very early on, and resulted in Matt Doherty playing centre back, who I thought left-sided centre back, who I thought was excellent, really, and really impressed with him defensively and even in possession. But it's a huge opportunity for them too. You'd expect Dara to start and get his first senior cap, which is a huge day for him. And it's always special when you see players like that come through the underage setup. You think the work that Temple Oak United and St. Kevin's have done to get onto to that level, and similarly with Jason Knight, his first call up, someone who I actually went to school with, and it's sort of it is special when you see
Cabinteely,
Cabinteely
all the way up
through and through. He never,
not one of those fake Cabinteely lads since the League of Ireland.
No, he never wavered. When other people around him wavered from that team, and other people tend to do that in schoolboy. But it's a huge opportunity for him. He's been flying with Derby. Absolutely.
Playing with Rooney in midfield, ensures their goal, that goal a couple of Saturdays ago that we mentioned. Yeah,
absolutely. And he's just got a brilliant attitude on the pitch and a huge energy levels and ability in that sense. And, whether he starts or whether he comes on to get that first senior call-up just will give him a sense of how close he is. And, he's performing week in, week out in the championship. And, last year he sort of played more on the right wing. And I'm not, if most people would say maybe it isn't his best position, but he was sort of filling a gap almost, if you like, this year, sort of playing in a two with Graham Shinnie at Derby, and it sort of maybe is suiting him more. And ultimately it's where he played growing up for Cabinteely. But just delighted for Jason, because he's put a lot of hard work to get in there, and look, it's only the start for him, and hopefully the start for him and Dara to really kick on. And like we said, the likes of Shane Duffy, John Egan, that are not pushing on almost, but started getting into their late 20s, and maybe Stephen Kenny might try and build the squad around the likes of Dara, the likes of Jason Malumbi, like Jason Knight, and sort of build for the future with that in mind. But huge opportunity for the two lads, and look, we wish them well and hope they get their first international caps.
I want you to speak very briefly about England's performance. They've gone back to a back five, seems to be working. If you look at some of the players that have come through on the scene, Calvert-Lewin get his debut goal against Wales. Big moment for him to continue that form with Everton. Grealish just got a run in the first game in Wales. What were your thoughts on England overall today, and how do you feel they're equipped maybe towards a Euros next year, which obviously Ireland won't be a part on, but England and possibly Northern Ireland and a couple of the home nations as well?
I thought Belgium battered them in the first 40 minutes. Had a goal disallowed, rightfully, for offside, but just Belgium I thought were really good, and England were really poor. I thought they were set up wrong, and Mason Mount playing, and he was kind of playing in off the right, and whether he has the ability to do that already, I'm not too sure. Kane was sort of rested with injury, came off the bench. But the back five was really interesting, because he went with three recognised right backs. He went with Trent Alexander-Arnold as right wing back, Kyle Walker as right centre back, and Kieran Trippier as left wing back. And I think Walker did pretty well defensively. We didn't see
that's where Walker played in the World Cup, isn't it? Right centre back.
Yeah, and I think it kind of suits him in a way. He's got that pace that maybe Maguire and Dyer don't have. But Trent Alexander-Arnold just didn't really fire. And look, we're used to him dominate offensively, and you think it might sort of suit him playing offensively, but it just didn't really work. But like you said, England just eked out a result, because especially considering going 1-0 down, I thought the writing was on the wall, and missing a few sort of starters, the likes of Kane, Sterling. You'd imagine Sancho was sort of dropped almost, if you like, because of that COVID, or that party he went to with Abraham and Chilwell. So maybe just maybe it's just interesting that England somehow managed to win that, and beating the number one team in the world, going top of their group. Yeah, just spells maybe a little bit of trouble. The only thing is that defensively,
see, I think if they're playing a back three, Conor Cody plays back three for Wolves, and he's playing really, really well. Why don't you just put him there to start. You know, it's similar almost to Ireland, I guess, in a way. But they're actually playing that formation for Conor Cody, but they're not playing him.
Considering he started and ended up as captain against Wales after
I thought he would start
50 minutes. I thought he scored it. I thought he was a shoe-in. He's so good at 3 at the back because he can read the play. His passing ability is unbelievable, so he doesn't sit down at that regard. I thought it was a weird one. You know, Eric Dyer is good, but at times, especially for the goal, Lukaku just bullied him, and Dyer got caught the wrong side of it and gave away the penalty. And look, Lukaku could do that to you, but you know, going forward, and even for Tottenham, that'd be a worry. Dyer defensively, and surely Southgate might look to go. And who else have you got? You've got the likes of Joe Gomez. I'd say after the Villa game, his stock has fallen. You know, the likes of Tarkowski, Michael Keane. So, you know, that
they've options, but like, again, I just think the back three, I was very surprised. Southgate's had a couple of questionable calls, you know, even like not naming a left back in last month's squad, little things like that. You know, I don't get a lot of the stuff going on, but maybe I'm not close to as much as the Ireland team in terms of keeping an eye on these things. But it just seems from the outside looking in, the couple of calls where you're like, well, what's going on there? Like,
he swapped Trent Alexander-Arnold for Reece James, who should be with the 21s and kind of got promoted, and so they ended up with 4 right backs. Well, they got rid.
Came off. Yeah.
Alexander-Arnold came off,
and the best right back is probably sitting at home in Lamptey.
Yeah, but it's a weird one because he likes a right footer at left wing back. You think of Ashley Young played there in the World Cup, but you'd imagine Chilwell, once he starts getting his fitness fully back, and I think that COVID,
it was just weird that with Bertrand wasn't called up last month, for example. You know?
And I think that COVID incident with that we spoke about with Sancho and Abraham might have just hampered him. But I think going forward, I think Chilwell at left wing back is, you know, and all of a sudden that England team looks really good if they can just sort out defensively and of course Pickford and goal.
Yeah, well, the goalkeeper is the issue. I think Dean Henderson ultimately, but if he's not playing, then where do you go with that? Like Jack Grealish, I think, should be in that team too. But
yeah, that's the one I couldn't.
He is playing phenomenally, and I think he's that adaptable. I know his best positions off the left, but you could still see him put in a lot of different positions, and I think he just carries a ball in a way. You know, imagine, I suppose, even as an impact sub, I suppose he'll be a vital player for England. He has to be. But Southgate again seemed to be slow bringing him all the way in, and I don't know if I'm not paying enough attention to it. But Grealish should have been in the squad for the last year or so, and he's only getting into it now.
Yeah,
and there was a comment, sorry to cut across you, Sean, where he said
there's been a couple of comments.
Yeah, he said Grealish has to get used to doing it against good opposition. But sure, he's been doing it in the Premier League with the 17 best team last year. Arguably, they should have got relegated last year, and now he's got a couple of players. Anyway, it just seems odd. But
yeah, and they aren't set up to get the most out of those attacking players. You know, if I was Southgate, in that sense, if you are playing 5 at the back, I think playing 3 in midfield, sort of with a 6, 8, and a 10, and then having 2 up top, and sort of the pace you've got of the likes of Calvert-Lewin or Rashford, or you want to go Sancho. But I think playing Mount on the right today just didn't really work, and that midfield too, I thought Declan Rice was absolutely outstanding, and it will probably pain Irish people to listen to it, to considering their recent woes, but Declan Rice was unbelievable. But I think him and Henderson sort of played the same role, and when Calvin Phillips came on, England really controlled the game for the last while. But yeah, England look pretty good at the moment.
And Scotland beat Slovakia, our nemesis there.
Yeah, but Slovakia's, second team, I think only Hamsik and Duda were the only survivors from their win on penalties against us. But I was pretty impressed with Scotland. Look, they scraped through on penalties as well.
They were shocking against Israel now, I have to say. They were a bit improved.
Yeah, look,
there was comments like, I think Ali McCoy said on ITV highlights straight after the whistle of Scotland, like, fair play to the editor for getting 6 minutes of highlights out of that. And then I even saw a YouTube comment, it was 4 minutes 20, and someone commented saying fair play to getting 4 minutes 20 highlights out of that, including about 2.5 minutes of a penalty shootout. So
yeah, look, Steve Clarke's sides aren't the most advanced in terms of their football, but I thought they were a lot better today. I think,
and they're missing loads of players.
Yeah,
like Armstrong's a massive loss.
Armstrong, Tierney, Ryan Christie. So, if you take 3, of their high quality players out, Callum McGregor came in off the bench, but their midfield is, considering they're missing Armstrong and Christie, they still had Kenny McLean, John Fleck, John McGinn, and they played 5 at the back with Scott McTominay. And to be honest, it really worked. Look, we all know Slovakia probably aren't the best going forward, but it may be something that Manchester United look at if they do go and flirt with playing 5 at the back. I think Scott McTominay, and even coming out with the ball and his long range passing was so good. And I think he should be starting for United. And if he isn't starting in midfield, why can't he start at the back? And maybe they could develop him in, because he's certainly got the pace for it. And you think the one thing Maguire lacks and the one thing Lindelof lacks is that pace. And I think McTominay has it. And I was really impressed with him, you know.
Just so for people who didn't watch best, so he was right centre back. Do you think you couldn't see him doing it in a back four now? It would have to be a back five, or?
Yeah, you know, I think to start anyway, you know, if he's to get used to playing defensively, I think
he does have all the features of a centre back.
Yeah, and sort of when I didn't look at the team, and I turned on the match, and I was looking at O'Flair Scotland, and then going across the line, I went, geez, they're playing 4 centre mids, McGinn, McLean, Fleck, and McTominay, and I was like, how's that going to work? And then they set up, and McTominay was playing 3 at the back, they're playing right side of a 3 at the back, and I was like, geez, I'd love to see how this works. And it did. And it looked really good. And, you know, he came out with the ball well and really confident in it. And if you are to play, you know, out from the back, which Manchester United have tried to do, and look what happened with that goal against Tottenham. But I think it could work. And something going forward, because he's not starting for them week in, week out, and he'll want to start. And maybe that's his way in. And United, you know, they almost sue 5 at the back, if you think about it.
Well, Maguire was probably when was his best football? The 2018 World Cup, and where was he playing? Centre back of a 3. What's Paul Merson's famous line on the back 3 of Maguire?
You play 3 at the back because your defense ain't good enough, so you gotta play 3. But I think
we just linked that in the description there if you want to have a look at that clip.
But I think that actually that could work.
He has half a point there, Merce. I know we were like not half a point,
but look at David Luiz. You know, David Luiz has never really done it in a 2 and 3.
He is really good in the 3.
Yeah, and he's got a little bit more cover. And even when England were playing in the second half, Dyer was a lot more, you know, sharp and got out ahead of Lukaku and didn't let them pin them back. And Dyer's able to do that when you've got 3 at the back because you've got a little bit more cover. And it's certain things like that. And you know, look, the short-term fix to United's defensive woes is trying out a 3 at the back, and even playing Shaw left side of it, Maguire, Lindelof, and then see how Tellez comes in and does. And then even in midfield, it allows you to have, you know, 2 and 3, and you know, United have the quality going for it. And you know, you could argue, or you could say that, you know, maybe if they drop a Martial or Greenwood and go for more defensive cover, they might win more games. But be interesting to see what happens.
The only thing with United, though, their issue isn't. Like their issue is breaking down teams at home, I guess. I know the Spurs game was probably an exception, but they're usually quite good against the big teams. It's just the small teams, and whether playing 5 at the back feeds into that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I think it can do, because your wing backs can go high and wide, and your attacking players can come in and into spaces in field.
Is Wan-Bissaka attacking enough to do
yeah,
that?
maybe that's the only thing, and that
he could go right centre anyway.
Yeah,
so we're getting,
but look, we're getting. Yeah. But it just shows that there's huge
Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, and then McTominay.
Yeah, there's huge issues for United. But
yeah,
a good win for Scotland.
Yeah, and listen, final thing on the podcast really that aided to a little bit of time. We wanted to talk about COVID and maybe the future of international football. You know, like COVID cases. We spoke about Ireland. We spoke about Scotland. You know, you could argue the Connolly-Ida thing possibly cost us, you know, a place or a match in the Euros. Like.
And I think
a lot of money as well.
And look, if you look across the board, there's a lot of these cases. I looked at Naby Keita has a, and so what's going to happen when he comes back to Liverpool?
Napoli players weren't released, like Slovakia. It was almost Slovakia got the bad luck right up until kickoff, and then we almost got the worst luck in the end. It just probably doesn't make sense in the middle of a pandemic. Players flying all over the world, particularly when the clubs have done well enough. Particularly in the Premier League, you know, and other leagues in Europe overall, I think, because we haven't really heard too many cases done well in those bubbles. But when they're all going into different bubbles, someone's going to contract it. And again, it's like the virus; it only takes one person to get it, and then, you know, 10 people have it, for example, or whatever.
And that's the thing, and it kind of worked before the season because a lot of the players hadn't met up with squads. Like Matt Doherty came straight from his holidays because of Wolves in the Europa League. So, look, Nathan Murphy asked Nathan Murphy off the ball asked Stephen Kenny in the press conference, and Stephen Kenny gave an answer, which was, you know, he could tell that, you know, deep down, you know, international football probably isn't the answer. And Stephen Kenny very diplomatically said, look, I probably need to sit down. I'm in the bubble at the moment, and sit down in a few weeks and give you a proper answer as to whether these games should go ahead.
Just purely on the FAI to finish, you know, the lot's come out since we spoke on the match review. You know, it turns out that the reason it happened. It wasn't, you know, FAI had kind of planned it well, but Aaron Connolly and Alameda just ended up sitting in the wrong seats. It's almost laughable, I guess, in terms of but you know, they had no real option to go. And it's important to note that Norwich and Brighton weren't happy, and they said to the FAI that they don't want this public knowledge, which is why there was a bit of secrecy to it. So I think it was a bit harsh. Certain people went in on the FAI straight away. But the FAI had to charter a plane home for the two lads to both their clubs. It was just a bit of a mess, and COVID's one thing that, and I think most people are aware that it's just these things happen. Like, and we're all still getting used to protocols, and it was just frustrating that we made a bit of a balls of it, to be honest with you. But.
Yeah, look, and I think with the FAI, they haven't had much luck.
No, that's what it feels. I'd love to stick the knife in again, but
but I think just with everything that's happened, that it is a bit of a shame the way it's come out. But you know, look, football and sport has to move on, and it's played such an important role and at the moment. And you know, it'd be interesting to see when the Premier League does come back and focus shifts to the Premier League, and the list of players that can't play will be interesting because of international football, and whether we see the playoffs happen next month, you know,
or maybe they might just make it into a 2 or 3 week thing. It's mad that WhatsApp rumor reached Richie Sadler in the RT studios. So if you think of someone just sitting there watching the TV going, I know what I'll do, it was pretty impressive to get from there to actually get it into the RT studios via my phone as well as a few others.
Yeah, just kind of
anyone
goes to show you, good man Steele was
was he raging, or
when I shot, because it's a reference to Stephen Kenny, I went, no, I don't think I've ever heard anyone call Stephen Kenny Steele, and I'm not sure he is a Steele. So you know, it just shows you have to take everything with a pinch of salt.
That's it. And any last words? Like, this Nations League, golf, that's it for the weekend review.
There's actually maybe one thing, not sure if you've seen it, but there's a clip going around of Galway training and Jim McGuinness.
You know, when we were talking earlier, I knew there was something, I couldn't quite remember what it was. We'll speak a lot more about this going forward, but it's a mad clip as well. I say they are fuming that someone managed to get a clip of that.
And it looks like,
again, it's linked in the episode description for any Gal fans still.
It just looks real, sort of bizarre the way it's been filmed and everything, but it
looks like the most basic hand pass drill.
Yeah, but I think I'd say that's probably only the start of what Jim McGuinness is doing.
Though, it is coming not
that intensity that Jim McGuinness sides have. I think he's probably drilling it in, and you think
very boring.
Galway were the best side in the National League, probably. You know, the standout side, with some of the players they have, the likes of Shane Walsh. But there was a question mark about defensively. Whether it's the perfect fusion, we'll wait and see. But Galway are definitely, you know, regardless of Jim McGuinness, are going to be the side to watch and the side to, you know, probably the best side to watch their games this year.
That's something that could genuinely work with Porkjoyce and Jim McGuinness, or it just won't. But there's only one way to find out, I guess. And GA is great for, like, you don't see like football managers, say Premier League, for example, go in and be an assistant manager to another manager, where in GA it seems to be a lot more prevalent. Stephen Rockshire, exactly the example I was thinking of. Yeah, 100%. So it's great. It shows like these people are not afraid to put their ego aside and really come in. Like, look at Jim McGuinness. What's he going to get out of it?
Money, I'd imagine. Money talks.
That's the other thing.
He's not in North Carolina anymore.
That's a fair point. Moving on then. So yeah, busy week in tackling sport this week. Appreciate you guys listening to the weekend review. Wednesday we've got a Johnny Walker from the UFC interview. So really excited to bring that to you. There speaks a lot about the Irish connection. So he would, for those UFC fans, you would have been aware that for his last fight, John Kavanagh would have been coaching him. He has the Irish connection with an Irish girlfriend, and he almost kind of considers Ireland the second home.
Yeah, and heavily involved with SBG gym. So, you know, he sort of got that Irish connection, like you said, and we really enjoyed listening to him. And he's got unbelievable pedigree. You know, I think he's ranked number 9th in the light heavyweight division. We spoke about maybe his plans to move up to the heavyweight ranks, but very interesting guy and a great story, and you know, something to look out for.
Absolutely. And then following it will be the return of our Premier League predictions on Thursday with our sports preview of the weekend. We'll get those Premier League predictions in at the end. And then also we've got a Sean Tracy interview coming up and a lot more exciting episodes planned. So do get in touch with us at Tackling Sport. We really appreciate you listening. And wherever you listen, on YouTube and on your podcast platform, please subscribe to the show. And that's really it, Sean. All that's left to say is goodbye from yourself.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll chat to you later in the week. It's Johnny Walker coming Wednesday, sports preview Thursday. Have a great week.
Slán go fóill.